we're 5 months into this thing, into this campaign, into this election cycle, the midterms, and a guy mailed me a list of names on a petition that he had walked around his community to get signed to make sure that we had an independent candidate on the ballot. And in the letter, he said, this is because what's going on in Washington. And he specifically quoted the Iran war. He said, we can't do this anymore.
Welcome to Independent Americans. Welcome to episode 514. I'm your host, Paul Rieckhoff, and it is Wednesday, May 6th. That means it's Whiskey Tango Foxtrot Wednesday.
What the fuck, Wednesday? What the fuck, Wednesday?
It seems like every Wednesday there is some news that has us asking, what the fuck? And today is no exception. I am coming to you from New York City, USA, where the weather today is very crappy. It is rainy, it is dark, and we are in need of sunshine. And this show, I hope, will bring that to you. And today's artist of the day will definitely bring that to you. It is the great Bill Withers, who, of course, did Ain't No Sunshine, Just the Two of Us, Lovely Day, and Grandma's Hands. I think a perfect artist as we head into Mother's Day this weekend. You've still got time to get your mom or your grandma or the mother in your life a gift. You can also, of course, go to independentamericans.us and get some Independent Americans gear for your mama. But I'm going to bring you the five eyes I bring you in every show to try to bring you some sunshine on this rainy Wednesday: independence, integrity, information, inspiration, and impact. And our guest today is going to bring that and then some. I am continuing my Meet the Independent Candidate series. He is a returning champion. He is a Mississippi Army veteran. He is Ty Pinkins. He is coming up in just a second, and he's going to give us reason to be inspired, reason to be united, reason to be hopeful, and of course, reasons to stay vigilant. All right, folks, he is a returning champion. He's been on the show before, but for those of you that don't know his story, he grew up on a cotton farm. He moved from plantation to plantation. His dad worked driving tractors. When he was 13 years old, he started chopping cotton in the summers to help his parents. He worked in the fields throughout his teenage years. He eventually joined the Army, a decorated veteran, did 21 years, including 3 combat tours in Iraq, awarded a Bronze Star. He always focused on his education, continued his education as he traveled around the world. When he got out of the military, he founded a nonprofit organization serving and inspiring youth from low-income communities. And he's a real source of power, of inspiration, of unity, and a man who I think is truly meeting the moment, a voice that many of you may have not heard before, but I hope you will share his voice and his message. Rejoining us on Independent Americans, the great and powerful Ty Pinkins is back. Welcome back, sir.
So glad to be here with you, Paul, my bald-headed brother from another mother. So happy to be on the show with you again today.
Now, this is why you need to watch on YouTube, folks. When we were getting ready, we had identical white shirts on, and I went and put my coat on so we have a little bit of contrast here. But we look like, both sides of a negative photo here, right?
Both sides, 2 sides of a coin, man. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for the invite.
Always happy to be in conversation with you, to be around your energy. I'm so inspired every time I talk to you, and like I know a lot of folks are. We're going to talk about your race. We're going to talk about what's going on in the world. I'm interested to go under the hood now in Mississippi, now that you're deeper into this fight at a time where we see so many independent veterans rising all across the country. But let me start with the question I ask everybody, my friend. Where are you and how are you?
I'm in Vicksburg, Mississippi. Just took a little stop on the campaign trail to hop on this show, but I'm doing well. Just got off a show with Mississippi Today up in Jackson, Mississippi. Was in Tupelo a couple of nights ago, had a nice little town hall up there, home of Elvis Presley. And we're moving. We're getting ready to head to Natchez, go down to the Gulf Coast. So we got 6 months to go, and it's pedal to the metal till the end.
You've been relentless. I mean, how many miles do you have on your car in the last couple of weeks here?
It's funny you should ask that question. I started this campaign. I had about I would say about 70,000 miles in my car when I first started running for office a couple of years ago. Last night on the way home from Tupelo, I hit 250,000 miles. Yes, 250,000 miles over two campaigns, 3 campaigns I run in, and up to this one.
Holy
Listen,
smokes.
we've got a new transmission, a new windshield, 4 new tires. So we're moving, man. But you got to go. You got to keep running.
You are literally putting the work in and putting the rubber on the road and getting all across the state. And I know anybody who meets you, feels your energy. I think you're giving people a lot of hope at a time when they need it. Let me hit right in on our top topic, which I think is related here. The war in Iran is incomplete at best. We have ceasefires, but people are still shooting at each other. But let me ask you, as a guy who just put 250,000 miles on his car, can you talk about gas prices and talk about what people are feeling across the state of Mississippi that you're seeing while you're out there on the trail?
I drive a Tahoe. And when I first started running, it cost me, I would say, maybe high 50s, $62, let's just say, to fill my Tahoe up. Last night, $89. $89, and looking at gas prices across the state of Mississippi up to $3.90 some cents, maybe $4. People are feeling the impact of this war in Iran, and they're feeling the impact of leadership that makes decisions without thinking first. And they're also feeling the impact, and I want to say this clearly, they're feeling the impact of this dangerous relationship that we have with the country of Israel and some of the leaders in Israel who helped us get us in this situation. Because you know as well as I know, Benjamin Netanyahu and leadership in Israel has been trying to get presidents of the United States across multiple administrations to do what they baited Donald Trump into doing, which was to attack Iran, not taking into consideration the importance of the Strait of Hormuz. And now the American people and Mississippians in general are feeling the heat.
I want to pull it deeper into that, because I think it's a question that seems to be maybe is going to get some candidates hung up. It's going to get some candidates to avoid it. You came right out the gate and you're talking about Israel here, but I think it's important in the way you framed it. I don't want to put words in your mouth here, but you're talking about the leadership. You're talking about Netanyahu, and I have said that Netanyahu to Israel is like Trump to America. I mean, he is definitely out of the mainstream. He's more radical than where the people are. I think Netanyahu has given the people of Israel a bad name in the same way Trump is giving America a bad name. But I still, personally, I have love for Israel. I've been to Israel. I believe in the state of Israel. I think they are definitely facing threats and attacks like nowhere else in the world. I think they're an important ally. But I also don't think that their national security is always totally aligned with ours, right? We can have different approaches to things. But I think you drew a really important distinction. Can I ask you to just build on that? You said the leadership. You're talking about Netanyahu specifically, right?
We're talking about Benjamin Netanyahu and the leadership, and we have to have this conversation. It's difficult to have. Israel is an ally of the United States, one of our closest allies. But the American people see the same thing that we see. And leadership means speaking truth to power and telling people the truth. And the truth is that a person like Benjamin Netanyahu has caused the president of the United States to get the American people, including our sons and daughters from Mississippi, from California, from New York, where you're from, our American sons and daughters, in the middle of a conflict that's affecting all of us. And you can trace it all the way back to organizations like AIPAC and the amount of control that they have over our elected leaders. Take, for instance, my campaign specifically. Both candidates are tied to AIPAC, both of them. Cindy Hyde-Smith has collected over $250,000 from AIPAC, and that's the Republican. But the Democrat he has his hands in the cookie jar also. The guy that recruited him, Chuck Schumer, has collected $1.5 million from AIPAC. And if you can't put those two things together and then look at the rest of our elected leaders who have their hands in that cookie jar and are on a string when it comes to Benjamin Netanyahu and some of the policies that come out of the leadership in Israel that conflict with where the United States should be at right now.
So, Ty, what do you say when people say Donald Trump does what he wants and Netanyahu can't make him do anything? I think Levitt and others have said that Donald Trump, obviously makes his own decisions and nobody can make Donald Trump do anything. What do you say in response to that when he says it's my decision, I'm making the decision, it's not Netanyahu, AIPAC, or anybody else?
Well, who can believe anything that comes out of Donald Trump's mouth? You know, you, me, anybody. We know that this guy doesn't tell the truth, and Stevie Wonder could see that Benjamin Netanyahu is pulling Donald Trump's strings. That this is obvious, and the American people see it also, and the Republican Party is going to pay for it in 6 months.
So I haven't had a Stevie Wonder reference like that in a long time. So maybe it builds on our Bill Withers introduction in the beginning of the show. But let me ask you, talk more about what you're seeing in Mississippi on the war specifically, because you've been on the show and talked about how now as an independent, you can have conversations with people maybe in a way that they can't. But give us your sense of how unpopular, and I think it's unpopular, but tell me if I'm wrong, how unpopular the war in Iran specifically is in Mississippi, which is what, 2/3 Republicans? Like, it's a high percentage of Republicans in Mississippi.
Yeah, there are a lot of Republicans in Mississippi. I wouldn't give it a 2/3. I would say a little over 50%, maybe 56%, 55%. But it is unpopular all over this state. And here's an example. We talked about my car earlier in the 250,000 miles. Last week, I took it into town to get the oil changed at my local dealer. Go there religiously to get my oil changed. And I dropped my car off and came home. And about a few hours later, the guy that performed the oil change in my car pulled up to my house to pick me up so that he can take me back to get my car, right? In the car, on the way to the place, he asks me, the mechanic said, I did a little research on you. You're running for United States Senate. And we started talking about it. He was like, what is going on with this war that we're in? This is a mechanic that's changing the oil on my car, asking me about the Iran war. And he said, you know what? What's going on in Washington pisses me off. He said, this guy was 27 years old. He said, I could be over there, and I don't agree with it. And he said, for that reason, because you're running as an independent, I'm voting for you.
So I think this is really insightful, too, especially when you talk about that demographic, right? We're talking about men in their 20s and 30s, and that seems to be where Trump is hemorrhaging support right now.
Not only is he in his 20s and 30s, this is a young 27-year-old white guy who told me in that same conversation that he previously voted Republican and that never voted anything else.
Yeah, and so that's what I want to drill down on, because, I mean, he's in the demographic of Joe Rogan and Sean Ryan and other folks who've turned on Trump recently and said that they won't support him in large part because he said no more forever wars. He said no regime change wars. He said no new wars. Right. And now they're seeing him spend, over $25 billion in Iran. They want $1.5 trillion now for the Pentagon, which is like another $500 million for Iran. They want $1 billion now for the White House ballroom.
Wasn't it 200 million to start with?
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing. Like, they keep moving the needle and burying. But do you feel like? I mean, again, I've said people feel like they've been lied to, or now that they're getting ripped off and they got tricked. We had Eugene Merman, the great comedian, was on last week and said, people are saying, yeah, I know he's a liar, but I didn't think he was going to lie to me, right? And now you're hearing, is that what you're hearing from people, that they feel like he lied?
Not only am I hearing it from people, Paul, I'm seeing it from people. This morning I stopped by the mailbox and I got this letter in the mail right here. I'm not going to turn it over because I don't want to share anybody's personal information. And we're 5 months into this thing, into this campaign, into this election cycle, the midterms. And a guy mailed me a list of names on a petition that he had walked around his community to get signed to make sure that we had an independent candidate on the ballot. And in the letter, he said, this is because what's going on in Washington. And he specifically quoted the Iran war. He said, we can't do this anymore. And so these are strangers that are without even being provoked or going and doing this type of stuff and taking action. And I think that's that silent group in the middle, those independents, that 45% of independents that are waking up.
Yeah, I mean, this is a conversation I've been pushing on this show for many years. People often say to me, oh, independents are just Democratic or Republican leaners. And I said, well, look, often they don't have a choice. They don't. They only have Coke and Pepsi on the ballot. They don't have RC Cola, Dr. Pepper, or lemonade or anything else. And what a huge part of our movement is ensuring that people just have a choice. But I want to go deeper into that in a second. But talk to me about about whether or not that's getting on the Republican brand beyond Trump. Trump had a primary yesterday in Indiana on his vengeance tour. It looks like he did pretty well, right? He's still got power and the ability to influence people. But, you're running against Cindy Hyde-Smith, who's a Republican. She's a proud Republican. Mississippi is one of those states that Republicans take for granted. But do you feel like his stink is getting on her?
Yes, and you can't wash it off. You cannot wash it off. Listen, I got so many stories, Paul. Tupelo, just 2 nights ago, we're having a town hall meeting in Tupelo, Mississippi. He had some beef briskets from this guy that decided to donate some food and everything. And this guy comes in late. He's about 6 feet 3 inches tall, white guy, bald head, just like me, big guy. And he has his son who's in the 10th grade with him. He walks in the door and we're talking about he and his son had just a few weeks ago gone to Wrigley Field up in Chicago, and they had just gotten back to Mississippi. And he said, look, I'm going to be honest with you. He said, I am a Republican. I cannot vote for Cindy Hyde-Smith. I'm going to sit here and I need you to tell me why I should vote for you. Yes, it is getting to people here in Mississippi. That demographic of voters that traditionally votes Republican, they're leaning to the middle. They are leaning to the middle. And what I tell people all the time is take a look at that Gallup poll. 45% independents, 27% Republicans, 27% Democrat. The only issue is those two respective 27%, they're very, very loud. And they make themselves seem like they're more than they really are. And we're seeing that on the campaign trail here in Mississippi, where I'll have Democrats yelling and screaming because they're concerned that somebody's going to take their votes. But there are independents that I see in the grocery store, at the gas station, at the mechanic shop that's changing my oil, who are quietly whispering, we got your back. Don't stop. I have people that'll walk up to me mad and said, you better not stop. You better not.
Yeah, I think this is actually a good transition for us to go below the radar. I think this is a less and less silent, almost majority of people who we won't know how pissed off they are. We won't know how much they follow through until this November when we see the election, especially because so many of them are frozen out of partisan primaries. But let's talk about where your race sits. I want to get to Hyde-Smith. I want to get to the Democrat Scott Colomb. But let's talk about where your race sits. Last time you talked to us, you talked about the barriers you have to overcome. But talk about how and if they're trying to squeeze you out of the stage so that people never even hear from you. Because when they hear from you, you're making sense. You can pull away from the Republicans and the Democrats. But talk about the barriers you're facing just to get on the ballot, to get on the debate stage, to get equal time with the partisan candidates.
Yeah, well, you and I talked about this before, and I think I became one of the first independent candidates to actually meet the ballot qualification back in December or January or something like that. So we're firmly on the ballot now. Don't have to collect any more names. This gentleman sent me this letter with these names on it, but we're already there. We're already on the ballot. Are the parties trying to squeeze me out? Yes, absolutely. Will they? No, absolutely not. That is not going to happen. When November 3rd gets here, there will be 3 candidates on the ballot, but there are only 2 choices. If you want the same vitriolic and violent rhetoric that's been going on in our country and has gotten us to the point where we are today, I tell voters, you got 2 choices already, a Democrat or a Republican. But if you want common sense leadership that moves us forward, there's only one person in the race to do that. And so with regard to the barriers and them trying to cage me out because I'm an independent, I tell people this argument that many on the left push with regard to independent candidates, the whole split the vote argument, that argument is a fallacy perpetuated by both parties when they feel threatened. When they feel threatened, that's when they start yelling, split the vote, or yelling, we need this candidate to get out. But that's not democracy. That is not democracy. And I tell people, and I'm going to tell my opponents when we get on the stage together, why are you trying to minimize or lessen the choices that voters have on the ballot? Why don't you go out and try to convince those voters to vote for you?
Yeah, so let's talk about that. I think one of the challenges you face, you're on the ballot, you're ahead of a lot of folks, right? I think that's a validation that you deserve to be on the ballot, even though the rules are different for you than they are for the partisan candidates. You overcome that barrier. Now you're fighting for space. I don't think they've named any debate dates yet, right? Or have they?
Actually, there is some whispers that there will be a debate sometime in September. I hope actually two. One officially in September, but there's one that's probably going to come up here in June in Kosciuszko, Mississippi. They're trying to put that together, and we'll see if both of them show up. If the Democrat and the Republican show up, I haven't been inviting them since December, or since September, but they won't show up on the same stage with me because I think that Democrats and Republicans, when they stand on the stage with an independent, they have to answer specific questions. You can't roll out the same old talking points that you roll out every election cycle. You can't say healthcare, education, and jobs and think that that's going to get you past the finish line. No, because then you have to answer the question: where were your two parties for the last 5 decades when healthcare didn't get taken care of? When jobs didn't get taken care of, when our schools were underfunded? Where were these two parties? And they don't want to get on the stage and answer that question sitting next to an independent because they're going to be held accountable.
So the other problem in your race and in many others is there's really no independent polling, right? And correct me if I'm wrong, right? What I've found is, partisan polling, right? I mean, it looks like there have been some polls by the, Southern Poverty Law Center, which is obviously going to, I think, support the Democrat. And they're going to try to show the numbers to say that in a three-way race that Colom's within striking distance. But frankly, I never trust any poll that's put together by one side, right? Until we have an independent poll, and it's something I think we need nationally. And I would encourage other media and educational centers to push for independent polling so we can really see where people stand. But, they've got you anywhere from, 5% to 20%, him from anywhere from 10% to 30%, her, all we know is she is unpopular, right? But we don't know how unpopular, but we don't really know. And here's what I'd ask you is number one, what do you use as a reference point to track where you are versus the two of them? And in a situation like this, where the Democratic brand has a lower favorability rating than Trump, especially in a state that goes to Trump, isn't the Democrat the spoiler here? I mean, they're going to try to label you the spoiler, but I think in your race, the Democrat's actually the spoiler here, right?
And that's what I try to share with voters, and they get it when I explain to them, okay, well, first of all, you need to ask yourself who did the polls, who paid for the poll. And then also ask yourself this right here. If you have lost, your party has lost 15 consecutive races for United States Senate in the state of Mississippi. Then you add to that 5 consecutive races for governor in the state of Mississippi. So if your party has lost 20 straight races over a 50-year period, what makes you think the 21st time is going to be the lucky charm? And so you can put a poll out there, but here's the poll numbers. We do have poll numbers. Here's the poll numbers that I pay attention to. 45% of the country considers themselves independents. 27% consider themselves Democrats. 27% consider themselves Republicans. Here's the other poll that I take a look at. Only about 35% of Americans have confidence in the Republican Party. Only about 28% of Americans have confidence in the Democratic Party. That tells me that's in line with that Gallup poll with regard to independence in the country, and there's a space for independent candidates to wedge themselves in there. And the only thing it is you have this group on the left that's so loud, this group on the right that's so loud, and they start screaming louder when they see an independent in the race. Me, I take it as a badge of honor that they want to try to squeeze me out. That means that somebody's terrified.
Well, I think you have to run it through the model, right? And if these folks are going to say, they're going to use your race, they're going to say, hey, all right, he's only polling at 8% and he should drop out, right? But you're also running as an independent without the machine, without the D next to your name, all the other things. But I would like to see someone come in, and any billionaires listening or anybody who runs, I don't know, the University of Mississippi or somewhere else, run a poll with Ty dropping out and seeing where the Democrat, and then run one with the Democrat dropping out and see how Ty does, right? Because that's the real fair way to do it, is actually show that the Democrats, there's no way in hell a Democrat's going to win in Mississippi. At least not now. I mean, if Jesus Christ himself were running in Mississippi, he'd probably lose to a Republican right now. But you probably have more of a shot than the Democrat.
Absolutely. The data's already there, Paul. The data is there. Real live data. Mike Espy, 2 times, 5 years ago, lost. Mike Espy, the first black congressman in the state of Mississippi, and Secretary of Agriculture, name recognition, money, $12 million raised for his race. That's a lot of money in the state of Mississippi in a race. Lost. Ronnie Musgrove.
And lost by a lot.
Huh?
And lost by a lot.
He didn't. He lost by a lot. Ronnie Musgrove, former governor of Mississippi, ran for United States Senate. Down the drain. David Barrier, former congressman from Mississippi, white guy, ran as a Democrat. Lost. Travis Childers, very popular lawyer in South Mississippi, state representative, same thing. But here's the one that really should get people to thinking. In the state of Mississippi, a white man named Presley, Brandon Presley, the cousin of Elvis Presley, in the state in which Presley was born, arguably one of the most popular names in the state of Mississippi, ran as a Democrat in 2023 against one of the most unpopular governors in the country, Tate Reeves, and lost. So you mean to tell me that a white man named Presley can run in Mississippi and lose, and a black man named Cologne is going to run against a white woman in Mississippi and win? Come on, man. This ain't algebra. It ain't that complicated.
I think we have. I think we talked about T-shirts last time you were on this show. It'd be like, come on, man, because I think this is important. Here's the other factor too. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Cindy Hyde-Smith and Cologne, neither one are veterans.
No, neither one. I'm the only candidate in this race that has worn the flag of this country on my shoulder and served in combat for 3 years over 36 months at war. The only one. Here is also what I'm the only one as. I'm the only candidate in this race that does not own stock and has pledged to not buy, sell, or trade stock when elected to Congress. What just happened, Paul, the United States Senate Ethics Committee sent me an email, the same email that sent Scott Cologne and Cindy Hyde-Smith, and that email says, we need to know your finances. We need to know it. So we had to submit it, and it's public record. I'm the only one that does not own stock. How in the world can we expect people to ban the buying and selling of trading stock if they're buying and selling and trading stock before they even get to Washington, D.C.? Here's another one. I'm the only one in this race that does not accept money from AIPAC. I am the only one. I mentioned to you earlier, Cindy Hyde-Smith, nearly $250,000. Scott Cologne, recruited by the guy that's accepted $1.5 million from AIPAC. It ain't algebra. It's not that difficult. Mm-hmm. And I'm the only one that doesn't accept money from millionaires, billionaires, lobbyists, and super PACs.
No, I mean, I think this is an important position that many of the independent candidates are taking nationwide because in addition to gas prices, in addition to Iran, I think the corruption piece is really powerful. And I think people, there are some people that want to send a protest message, and you might be the protest candidate for people. You might be the receptacle for a lot of people.
Party lines. The corruption argument, that corruption line, it crosses party lines. Everybody sees it. And you can see it in Republicans' face when I mention it, they get very upset. Not at me, but they get very upset at the politicians who they know are doing it in Washington, D.C. And when I say it to Democrats, they start nodding slowly also, and they get upset about the corruption thing. And I think that's where we are as a country. We can talk about the importance of lowering healthcare costs. That's very, very important. We can talk about the affordability crisis. That's extremely important, making sure that people can afford groceries, can afford gas and stuff like that. We can talk about fixing the education system. Extremely important. We can talk about all of that. But unless and until we send people like Seth Bodner, Dan Osborne, Brian Bings, Todd Achilles, and me as independent candidates to the United States Senate, none of that stuff gets fixed. None of it gets fixed because it's almost like if you got a hole in your roof and it's leaking, and that hole has been in your roof for 45 years, and you keep hiring the same two contractors to come and fix the hole in the roof. They climb up on top of the roof at the same time. Then after the rain stops, they climb back down and argue for 4 years about who didn't fix the hole in the roof. And then the next election cycle, you hire the same two contractors. That don't make sense. That doesn't make sense.
It's true. It's true. And the hole is getting bigger and the rain is getting more intense. And I think this is a really important point, Ty. I mean, I've said this to other people. So look, you know, chances are low that you will win, but you might win, right? And even if you don't win, you are forcing a really positive conversation. You're talking about about not taking outside money. You're talking about corruption. You're talking about gas prices. You're talking about your military service. You're bringing the candidates and the parties to task on some issues. The stock trading one is a great example. Right. So I think that's this is where I view our movement as a movement, because it's an evolution. We're pushing forward the entirety of the politics. Even if we don't win, we're driving it in a more moderate, more thoughtful, more transparent, more independent direction. And I think that's, frankly, another reason to root for you and candidates like you that are deep in the fight.
Fighting against overwhelming odds, you can't get any more American than that. But during the Revolutionary War, we got our butts kicked all over the place. New York, Massachusetts, Virginia, South Carolina, George Washington and those patriots, they were getting it. But they never stopped. They never gave up. They retreated, they collected themselves, and they kept fighting. And for me, as a candidate in this race, I have a responsibility. My responsibility is to present myself to voters as an independent, to tell them the truth, to let them know what's going on. And after that, it's voters' responsibility to go to the polls and vote for who they want to vote for, whether that be me as an independent, the Democrat, or the Republican. You get what you pay for. And that's why I'm running. Do I think we're going to win? Absolutely. I'm one of those crazy optimists. I always think I'm going to win, even when the odds are stacked against me. But we have to do it. We have to have these conversations. We have to have these conversations about the leadership in Israel. We have to have these conversations about the genocide in Gaza. We have to have these conversations about a dementia-induced president of the United States who's gotten us in a war with Iran. We have to have the conversation about how toxic our politics is in Washington, D.C. because of all the money that our elected leaders are tied up in. And that's what I'm trying to present to voters here in Mississippi.
I think you're providing a very, very compelling alternative. You're bringing forward really important ideas. You're also bringing a lot of hope, and people need hope. We say it all the time. It's the oxygen of our democracy. I encourage folks to check the links in the show notes. They should donate to your campaign if they can, volunteer to your campaign if they can, and help spread the word. I mean, Ty, I hope that at least my show can help get you in front of more media as well, because you've talked very, very consistently about how you have to fight to get media space as well, and I think that's really important. Right?
I know you see exactly what I'm talking about, but that's not
last night. And I'll tell folks this is important. And I spoke to John Updike about this morning. So I go on CNN almost every week, right? And I go on MS Now, I go on News Nation. I've got regular segments. Last night on my segment with Aaron Burnett, something really interesting happened and important happened. They had a Republican and a Democrat and then me. Aaron is in the middle, but it's kind of like I always celebrate C-SPAN. Because when I go on C-SPAN Washington Journal, they've got a line for Republicans, a line for Democrats, and a line for independents. And one of the things we just need to say is, hey, give us a line. Give us a fighter in the ring. Don't exclude us from the fight. Don't remove us from the – we deserve a place at the table. Nothing about us without us. And we are 45% and growing. So if you've got, only the Democrat and you've only got the Republican, you're missing half of us. But oftentimes they put me against a Republican or against a Democrat. But yesterday was a big step forward, I think, and I credit Aaron Burnett and her producers, and I credit CNN for carving out that space. And I think it's what we need to see more of. I don't only want to see information about how Republicans and Democrats feel about the ballroom. I want to see how independents feel about everything. And that's part of what you're pushing forward, man.
That's the fascinating phenomenon to me. I think that would be so much more attractive to voters and to listeners, to have that third voice in the room. To offer a different perspective than the same two perspectives that we've been getting over and over and over again, the Democratic perspective and the Republican perspective, having an independent in that room. And I'm still baffled as to why mainstream media is so reluctant to say, hey, let's do this thing. Yeah. Well, I know why. You know why. So
yeah, I mean, you know what? And it's interesting because a lot of people in media used to call themselves independent, right? And a lot of them, like, I think Sean Hannity used to consider himself independent, right? But there are a lot of folks who've now picked a side. But there's also a reason why someone like Joe Rogan and Sean Ryan and others are getting traction, because people want something different in their media, just like they do in the candidates. But let's shift to something good.
Something good.
I'm going to go first, and then we'll go to you. I got a good one today, and I hope Chris can play the clip. But I always say, look for the helpers. There's a really good one today, and I'm going to ask Chris to play the clip here if he can.
How did you come to be in that spot?
I'm the crossing guard on 55th and King Session. When I tell you, he ran the light, T-boned the lady, I'm bobbing and weaving. I'm just thankful to be alive right now. Thank you, Jesus.
What did it sound like?
Bam! No, not to be funny. I swear, not to be funny. It happened that fast. And luckily, I'm alive.
How do you know what time of day
I had
kids
to pull
are playing out there?
They was out there. They were in there. I had to pull a kid out. No, I had to pull, what's the name, nephew out.
What?
Mm-hmm. No, what's the name, nephew? Yes.
So there were kids in there.
Yes.
So describe this for me. You hear the bang.
Bang. I don't know which way to go because he ends up in the schoolyard. Luckily, I wasn't on the corner. I'm in the shade slightly because it's an 82-degree day today.
And then what?
Crazy. My adrenaline is still running. I'm just thankful to be alive.
But there's a Philadelphia crossing guard who is eating an ice cream cone and talking about how he rescued a kid after a stolen truck crashed into the playground. I mean, it was an amazing clip and it is an amazing story. His name is Jameel Ransom. He was explaining what happened, and he said, I grab a kid because he's stuck, and I pull him out. He said, there's nobody there. He's trapped. I run in and get myself, and my heart is like boom, boom, boom. And no children were hurt. And this guy's a crossing guard. He's got his sunglasses on and an ice cream cone. I think he's eating the ice cream cone in part because he's got to calm himself down from this craziness that just happened. But he ran in. He ran in when nobody else did. He ran in. He saved a kid. And he's an amazing guy. I hope he runs for office. But I think it's an example of how many people are out there stepping up every day to do the right thing, to run in when others are running out. So my something good today is Jameel Ransom in Philadelphia. My Knicks are playing the Sixers tonight, so this might be the only guy from Philadelphia I root for. And he sounds like a tough one. He's probably a lot tougher than Joel Embiid, who I heard is out again tonight. But big shout out to this guy and to his community in Philadelphia for being a helper and being something good. All right, Ty Pinkins, over to you. What do you got? What's something good?
Something good. Greenville, Mississippi, several months ago. You know, I always have a story from the campaign trail. Greenville, Mississippi, several months ago, I'm at a campaign event, and a lady walks up to me, and she has this bag on her shoulder, and she introduces herself to me, and she says, I remember you did this run across the state of Mississippi, 976 miles, and we talked about it, and she was like, I don't have any money. And I'm like, I'm fine, I don't need your money. And she said, I don't have any money, but I have something for you. She gave me a package of tomato seeds. She gave me a packet of tomato seeds, right? And so months later, last month, I planted those tomato seeds out back, right? And they started growing. My tomato seeds blossomed from that meeting I had with that voter in Greenville, Mississippi. And I saw some geese and some little ducklings back there with them this morning.
I love it. That's something. I mean, you should do a whole show.
From me, Paul. You never know what you're gonna get from
I
me.
love it. You should do a whole show or a book after this. I mean, if anybody's watching, it's a book agent. You should give Ty a book deal, and every chapter can be stories from the campaign. And the tomato seeds is going to be a good one. Don't log off because we got to upload this. But the great Ty Pinkins, I appreciate your leadership, your voice, your inspiration. You're such a role model for our kids, man. You always have been your whole life, but you continue to do that. Keep giving them hell out there, man. And folks can donate to help pay for some gas in that truck that's got 250,000 miles on it. Nobody's working harder than Ty Pinkins. And you're a great example of the people of Mississippi and a great American, man. I'm always honored to have you on the show, and thanks for joining us again.
Thank you, Paul. Your listeners can go to typinkins.com to help me in this campaign. TYP as in Paul, INKINS.com. I appreciate joining you.
Do it, everybody. And he takes money. He takes digital donations. He also accepts tomato seeds. We are daily now. We're hitting number 15 on the charts. You know the deal. Be sure to follow everywhere you get your podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Hit us up on YouTube where you can see me and Ty chopping it up. You can see the archives, see our clips. You can join our Patreon community, chip in a couple bucks to help me keep bringing you the Meet the Independent Candidate series. America has been divided, but we're trying to bring people together here at Independent Americans with voices like Ty that you won't hear in traditional media nearly enough. We're trying to bring the light to contrast the heat. So if you're among the 45% of Americans and growing that are independent, this is your show, especially if you're in Mississippi. Our independent movement is bringing you hope for the future, country over party, people over politics, light over heat, challenging the status quo, punching above our weight class, and fueling a new movement that you see is growing, and people like Ty bringing the hope that's the oxygen of our democracy. If you enjoyed this episode with me and Ty Pinkins, please share it far and wide and invite others to declare their independence. Tell them about this guy you just heard about that's an American hero that's trying to continue to serve. And stay vigilant, my friends, because eternal vigilance is the price of freedom. No, you're not alone in your vigilance. We're all vigilant, and we're all in this together, and we're in it with Ty. I'm your host, Paul Rieckhoff. Thank you for tuning in to Independent Americans. I will see you tomorrow. Happy Hump Day. Happy Wednesday. Good luck to my Knicks tonight, and stay vigilant, America.
Archipelago, he tells me the left and right are dreams for those without a clue. And when you wake, it's time to grow. And it's not cool to believe in school, but if I can say one thing, I've seen the children of the revolution and the good trouble they can bring. He says the red and blue identity independent is an attitude. An island in the sea of rhetoric and archipelago, he tells me the left and right are dreams for those without a clue. And when you wait, it's time to grow.
Powered by Righteous Media.